Yeah, I love how you're directly addressing just the whole waiting for me to be ready.
Oh,
Best way to get someone ready and on board is give them a job. Give them a
is that
job. Make them feel like they're important. They're critical to the beginning of something. So this is Decoded Podcast. See, I already twisted up the script. This Decoded Podcast. I'm Chris Clough at Chasing Squirrels on Twitter. Here for a short time. Here for a fun time. Not for a long time. He's Roland Chidiak at our Chids on Twitter and other spaces too. This is season 6, episode 34, number 252, Decoded Podcast, Saturday morning. Here we go.
that was perfect.
I got right
That
into
was
the,
perfect.
I had someone say to me, I was at the, I'm going to talk a little bit about my assist training this week. So in my school board, that's applied suicide intervention training, and someone said, so the front end of the getting to know yous, so all the ice breaking that we did sort of like in the first quarter of the first day, critical because it was a small group and we got into some pretty intense conversations. But someone said, I could listen to you tell a story all day. And I'm thinking, I wouldn't even listen to me tell a story all day. I'm like, I wouldn't tell a story all day, but sometimes I can make it sound good. Sometimes.
I think you're good at telling stories. Will you read a little bit to us, Chris?
Oh, sure. How to draw the glitch effect tutorial. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get a glitch effect for the drawing for today. So that's what I'm teaching myself for the first time. So the drawing today is entirely based on a style of drawing that I've never tried before. I
Okay,
want to say that.
can you tell me the style again, please? Does
Glitch.
it actually is that what it's actually called? The glitch
Yeah,
style?
so it's glitch effect, and
Okay.
you've seen it. I mean, anybody out there can you can Google that shit if you want. Um, and it's just where part of it is using sort of a bluish color, a reddish color, and then a base black over a base black line drawing, and then you kind of give it a smear effect. So it's kind of the glitch is a little bit. I think it's from my understanding, it's kind of based on those old 3D glasses kind of a
Oh,
thing. So
cool.
you had the red and blue, and it kind of so this is the first time I've been aware of it in the past, but this is the first time that I've tried to do it. And the problem already I can see, I really like these paint markers. I'm going to do a product placement here. So these right here, they're Posca, they're paint markers, but and when you use these, they're acrylic paint inside. So sometimes I try to hit the mute, but if you hear me doing this or you see my hand off screen, I'm like shaking the paint marker because in that tube there's paint. And the thing about these, it's not a really fine tip, but a fairly fine tip. Um, and unless you're using really smooth paper, it pulls on the paper. So I'm not using the right kind of paper. You want a fairly smooth paper. But anyways, we'll see where I get with it.
The reason why I ask is because I wonder if I could play with it on Mid-Journey.
You
The glitch
can.
effect.
Try taking take some like any old image and apply a glitch effect, and you'll see it. And you'll realize, oh yeah, man, I've seen that before in other spaces.
Okay, I like that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Do you want to add more layers on to your assist training from this week?
Yeah. So about 5 years, here we go, settle in, kids. Going 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago.
I'm gonna hit mute because you're settling in.
So, it was about probably, I think maybe 6 years ago, our board offered, it was on a PD. This was, I think, prior to this moment that I just had of 2 days of training this week, 2 days of intensive training, all day training. There was a half day session by the same company in our board, and it was training in, they're called safe talks. So it's the conversation that you could have as the teacher with an individual that may be having some behaviors that are leading to self-harm. They could be having suicidal ideation, but they're in that zone. And so it's kind of it's in that zone of sensitivity training as the teacher. Like how do you how do you navigate that conversation if you find yourself in it? How do you openly advertise that you're a person that can have those safe conversations? Like you'll sort of help somebody in that mode. And then the final part is, so it's like your training, your availability, and then also um uh it also giving you some of the tools to help you, kind of like the individual that's in that mindset. So it's kind of like that three-stepper. And I can remember quite vividly when I was in the session, it was exhausting because it was really intense and it didn't ever let go of you. Like I felt it really had a hold on me, on my brain, my focus. I couldn't stop watching and listening and interacting with the material. And then I came out at the end, I was like, man, my head is just kind of full. Like I actually felt like, and what was nice about that is I was out at a school that I had a 45-minute to an hour commute home. And this is where I discovered back roads. So I've told you a few times on some days I take a back road to work, and it's a country road that runs parallel to the highway. And it adds, 50% to my travel time. So I have to make sure that I have the time to do this. But the back road travel for me is really calming. And if I've got farmers fields on each sides, and if I have an undulating road, like all that stuff really helps me. Windows down, breeze, a little bit of sunshine, that 20-degree, 21-degree temperature outside. There's lots of stuff to it. That's my happy place. So I had to take a back roads drive home at the end of the day, just because that first version of the training, like the 1.0, just put so many thoughts in my head. So I knew that there was something that our board offered, which was the assist training, which is the more robust, where you are actually you then train to be the person that, let's say in that first version, you're the person that helps the person get to someone like what I was just trained in. So specific interventional tools where you have been let to know, or you do notice that this person is in imminent danger of killing themselves. Like that was what this whole training was about, is that they never let us leave the frame that imminent death was where you were. And that became really, both, it was stunning, and it was also critically important to hold that mindset, but also like fatiguing, because when we were doing the role playing, a couple times the instructor kind of brought us back to this moment, like, remember, you are looking to notice turning points to keep them from killing themselves. Like that's what you're, or to kind of like keep the way that they say it, to keep them safe. So it's to keep them safe for now. You're not stopping. You're not stopping long term the ideation, but you are trying to intervene. They call it suicide first aid. They liken it to, like, you're not looking to, like, if someone cuts themselves, you're the person that's okay. Let's clean it up. Let's get a band-aid on it. Let's halt some of the immediate pain and harm, so that we can get you into a process that will help you long term. So suicide first aid. And it was incredibly intense. But I said to the instructor at 3/4 of the way through the first day, and I shared this with you. I said, and easily in a decade, it was the clearest, most practical, emotionally rich, strategic, supportive. Like, it was the best professional development that I have had in a decade, because I could see at every moment, once we were into the guts of it, the starting point, the tools that you use to navigate that space, and the hopeful and helpful outcome. And I will say literacy, numeracy, growing success, student success, any of the peer mediation, restorative practices, any of the tech stuff, nothing has come close to the clarity that I had around this training, between around the clarity of me being in a role to support a student, and really me being in a role to support anyone. I could have this conversation with anyone that presented it to me. And what was fascinating is that when I got back to the school on Friday, the framework that they had us use, I wasn't using it to sort of notice suicidal ideation, but I was using it just to notice, because the process is, in, like, really sort of really just to break it down simply, is kind of in the first phase of it, you're sort of inquiring, getting a little bit of backstory, the check-in kind of phase. It's in the second phase, once a little bit of that story's in, the transition between the first phase and the second phase is asking a direct question: are you thinking about suicide? And that's critical. And anyone that listens to this podcast, or even you as you're sitting here now, if I'm tapping into your either, your student success mind, your parent mind, your aspiring leader mind, just your human side, to ask that question with the intention of talking about it, is a mind-blowing moment. And then once you get that commitment, you're in a different zone. You're in the middle zone of this conversation. In the middle zone, you're actually engaging with their suicide story. Like, so think about that now. So now you've actually asked, and you're not jumping to solution. You're staying with them and you're listening to their suicide story. And to do that, you're looking for a turning point. This is fundamental to this middle stage. You're looking for a turning point. So something in what they're saying could be, they really love guitar playing. Something in there, you hear something about guitar playing. And there's nothing quick about this, but just to give an example, you're listening for guitar playing. They really love guitar playing. So the movement between the second and the final stage is getting them to commit to talking about building a plan that will keep them safe for now, just for now, keep them safe for now, so that they can hold that goal of going back to their guitar playing. And then the final stage is once you have that commitment, and the hardest part is like listening for that turning point. The final part is then building the keep safe plan. And there's a structured kind of protocol for going through that. But I will tell you, the thing that in noticing this 3-step process many times in the past, and there was an administrator in our crew as well, they said, we skip that middle part. We go right from what happened to here's what's going to happen next. We don't go in that middle part. We don't spend enough time in that middle part of actually the dirt, the grunginess, the difficulty, the uncomfortable stuff, where the kid is just able to express, and you're right there with them actually talking about it. And of course, the affirmations, and I hear you, and the paraphrasing, all the guided, any guidance counselors that listen, there's that guided interview where you're sort of helping the person kind of navigate towards a goal. There's those parts too, but being very mindful that you are there to save this person's life for now, like just to keep them safe for now. That is your singular thing. Remember, you're talking about suicide. You're talking about suicide. You're talking about suicide. So it doesn't get too far of, oh, cool guitar. Yeah. Like you don't go too far and say, oh, like how long have you been playing? You have to be really mindful about going too deep by doing too many like probing questions. You're just looking for that turning point. And for me, that's difficult because I love to just keep talking shit. Like tell me more, tell me more. Your intent is to get the thing, to get them to commit to want to do that thing. And their commitment to want to do that thing is sort of, you just before that, you want to build a plan that will keep them safe to be able to do that thing again. So just kind of mind blowing. And then I go back to my classroom, and all I'm doing is I'm not, of course, now forever, and probably was before, listening for these conversations and these moments where kids are like, might be having these thoughts. But I'm also just thinking that about a communication tool. How do I stay more in that space? And they're color coded: orange, blue, and green. Orange, because it's kind of like construction color. So they're intentional to say that the orange phase is like construction, building. The blue, because blue represents sort of understanding, openness, let's see, and let's explore. And then the green, because it's kind of a universal color for first aid. So if I'm in, I don't think I do the blue zone well enough, because my brain automatically kind of like looks for my favorite things in the blue in order to get to the green. And we talked about that often in the system, the things that we apply are based on system favorites. And if I tie it back to just what we were talking about at the beginning, that the glitch is in the blue. The glitch is absolutely in that blue stage. Once you get the commitment from the individual that they are thinking about suicide, they're thinking about suicide right now, And then you go right into, well, let's talk about that. And it's in that blue zone where you find out their method, their the timing of it, the actual implement. Pills, is it going to be by some other weapon? You get right in there. You're actually having a conversation right there with them, and they're talking about suicide as if they're talking about their favorite video game, comic, food. And it's a mind-blowing moment to be in. And we were only role playing. And like I said, at the end of the day, I'm looking for my country road drive home because I'm like, I just need to have some fresh air. I just need to have some fresh air. But back to the first thing I said, the best in a decade easily. I kind of say a decade because the first, like, 5, 6 years, everything feels kind of fresh. Oh, cool. I get to do this other thing. And then you kind of settle into using those tools. So that's how I'm sure I had others as well that were good, but nothing like this.
I don't wanna spend, like, the whole time talking about suicide,
Hmm.
just because there are other things I'd like to talk about, but I
Yeah,
do
no,
wanna
I
know
gotcha.
at what point so as you're being trained on, staying in the moment and ensuring the student is safe in the moment, at what point do you switch over and then get, like, help? Because we're not trained to like, at what point so
Hmm.
you got the kid in the space that you need them. How do
Hmm.
you when do you call in the like the mental health professionals to jump in and ensure that moving forward in that day or whatever the kid is protected?
Hmm. So every board will have a protocol, or they
Okay, so
should
then
have
it
a.
just switch over into your board protocol. Is that
Well, no.
oh
Yes. I think it's what's critical. I think just to answer yours, and if anyone is like, yeah, man, like that's the big question, I would invite anyone listening, check in with your board and find out what the board protocol is, because this I can only speak to this training within the context of how we kind of roll. Our board has a suicide prevention intervention protocol. And within that protocol, this training is sort of mentioned. So you're sort of like, you're a part of the protocol, like you're one part of the actual process there. It's a good question. I will say that it's actually a fantastic question, because I think what it helps people do is be effective when they feel like they may be too human. And one of the things that I know, I've tried to work on my own sensitivities of making sure I don't believe I'm the only one like, and I'm just saying in the general sense, to solve a problem, like me understanding the power and importance of case management and having the right individuals in that case management has been, I would say, a process of the last 5, 6 years to me get really comfortable there, and to feel that two-way reciprocity. I guess I don't have to say two-way, but that reciprocity of support, that I know I'm good with the individuals that I have on my short list, to say this is the person that I'm going to go to when I need this. Right. So like, could be literacy. It could be stuff about AI. Like, I have my short list that I'm going to make sure that I always have with my phone. So that being said, they took us through a few different role play scenarios. One of them was, um, you are you're out for a drive and you're crossing a bridge and you see the traffic slowing down and there's someone standing on the rail. So understand, this training, of course, is for us to implement in school. This was board sponsored training, right? But the actual company uses these scenarios because the actual tool is like, it's like, if you've been trained in first aid or CPR, they kept on saying that's what this is. Like, this is no different. This tool is no different than you being able to do chest compressions on someone that has had a heart attack. No different. That's how they got us thinking on the first hand. So one of the scenarios is, you're on a bridge driving across and you see someone standing on a rail and they're looking over the edge. So that was a really good scenario for us to think about, because it shook up some of the automaticity that sometimes happens when we think as teachers. You're just going to walk to the office, you're going to get on the phone. Like, it puts you more in the center of like, what tool do I actually do first? And that particular role play generated a lot of conversation around, okay, even as you're getting out of the car, like what you're thinking, right? Like how do you prep yourself to be able to support someone like that? Now we went through the role play about talking to someone in that space as well, but there was other things like as you're getting out of the, some people said as soon as I got out of the car, as soon as I saw, I would be doing 911, and then I would be walking over. I'd put my phone away. Like people were really hyper strategized. I would hide my phone away, and then I would just be there with the person and talk with them. But I would have already called 911. Other people said I would wait to call 911 um, until we were in closer to that gray zone, green zone, where the person was willing to build a keep safe plan, because it's in the keep safe plan. One of the framework questions is who else can we include in this keep safe plan? And once you're in that zone, you're sort of over the hump of imminent danger, sort of slightly, just slightly, because of course anything could happen just after the actual that moment. But if you get the individual's commitment and there's a person they're willing to talk to besides you, that's one of your clue spots. Like that's how you're call that's gives you an indicator who you're going to call next. Of course, if it is imminent, as in you walk in. So there was another scenario where um, you're on a phone call, and as soon as you pick up the call, something happens on the call, and then the person says, if you don't give me a reason to live, this thing's going to happen. So right away, you're like, okay, so you're in that position. Do you call 911 right away because it's been presented to you that way? Is it the just keep them talking? Right. So there was a lot of really rich discussion around how do you leap first, and how do you leap first with the correct thinking? Your intention is always to slow things down. We're going to slow things down. The second part is that you're in first aid mode. So you're keeping them safe for now. In a school scenario, that can include bringing other individuals into the conversation. Deciding the when and where of that, from my experience so far, and I haven't had to, I haven't, I haven't enacted these tools in real time. In theory, I would say to you, some of that's going to be based on what's going on in the room, what's going on right there in the actual interaction. It's going to be based on what time of day it is in the school. It's going to be based on who you know is in the school. Calling 911 is always an option. Always. It's always an option. And it could pop up at any point in the process. Um, I think that and knowing that, I mean, I don't want to, I don't, it's kind of like, I want to be able to use this training. I do. I want to make sure that I can use this training to help someone. And I realize even in saying that, I'm also suggesting the dark side that this stuff exists, which is the reality. I mean, that's what I'm acknowledging, that these moments exist all the time in schools, in life. You're at the mall, like this happens. Um, One of the things that's a part of our protocol is that when you've gone through that keep safe process, you do have to call if they're under 18. You do have to call to have someone pick the kid up from school. So that's one of the safety protocols. And I have to go back to the protocol. I do think that there's another one that if you're over 18, I'm going to misquote it because I don't know if I was paying attention as much to the over 18 one. If they are, I think there's two defaults there. If they're not able, or it might be a three for if they don't have that sort of place to connect with or supports that they connect with, then I think we're supposed to get in touch with the police. We're supposed to contact the law enforcement. I'm gonna say that, don't quote me on that one, and I will flat out say I wasn't paying it. I was paying attention, but I locked in more the protocol for someone that was under 18 because I felt like that was closer to the center of where I'm going to notice this because I'm in a high school, right? So yeah, that's my best answer to this at this point. You can always include other individuals. The When you do it becomes the challenge, because if you are in a good curve where this person is talking to and you're moving through that first story phase and getting there, you ask about suicide and you get into that middle zone where they're talking to you about their plans, so they're giving you the information that you need to understand first what are the things that you need to disable in this moment, and second, where's the turning point that will get them to think about, I want to stay safe right now so I can get to that goal. So there was other chatter around like, how do you do your note taking, how do you sort of like track what's going on, right? there's no there's no mandate within this that you have to provide your notes afterwards as to what you did. And if you can internal, we got like wallet cards and we got a ton of, so you could, what I just told you in that framework, and I'm not suggesting you do, but what I just suggested to you is that if you found yourself in a scenario where this happened and you went through these sort of the three phases, the check in, hey, how you doing? Noticing and then asking the question about suicide, and then spending that middle zone sort of understanding the story of what they're going to do to themselves, and you look for the turning point and you look at the method and means, and then you get them to lock on to they want to be around for their turning point thing, their brother, their sister, to play the guitar, go to basketball this summer, and you build some sort of an agreement to keep them safe for now. Like, you can kind of do that, like that's the Cole's notes of what you do, and then you repeat, and that's it. I want to just say it again, it's keep safe for now. Keep safe for now. In the same way, if you were cut and you put the band-aid on it, you may need further medical attention, and you can start to kind of address some of that within the keep safe plan, like, can I connect you with some other resources and people? But anybody can do this process. Anyone, as in any caring adult or caregiver within the language, can use this process. Good stuff, man. It's good stuff.
Excellent. Thanks for providing us with a window into that.
Yeah, man.
Um, and thanks for addressing my question. Um, because even now in my work,
Hmm.
I've had a couple of um, I don't know what to call them, meetings. I've been in
Hmm.
a couple of meetings where people look at me and they're like, if you encounter anybody who's suicidal, like it's more like a you must do this right away. I'm like, bro, if I encounter somebody who's gonna hurt themselves in the moment, I'm gonna take action. Like I'm gonna call somebody, something
Hmm.
more capable to deal with it than me. Of course, what you say makes perfect sense. Keep them in the moment with you.
Hmm.
But I know I need backup. It was just funny. It's like, don't think you can solve it on your own. I'm like, I don't think that. But anyway, um, thanks for that. The only reason I'm wearing these glasses is because AI decided it wanted to put glasses on me. So I thought I'd start there, but I don't need them anymore.
That's awesome.
Gary's with us. Gary earlier said good morning. I
Good morning,
responded
Gary.
kind. Gary says he would love that training. Well, get after it,
Gary,
Gary. Start
mind
plugging your
blowing.
admin.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those, I will say, Gary, it took me 6 years to get the next one. Because as soon as I had the Safe Talk training, again from the same company, I'm like, yo, I want to go deeper into this. This is good. Like, it even gives me shivers now talking about it. This is good. And then, but it's limited, right? I think the protocol in our board is that there's either there must be one or two, I just don't know the number, individuals in each school trained in this, and it doesn't have to be administrator. Like, it can be anybody as long as you have two people trained, one or two people trained. So there's a little bit of a scarcity model on it. And we all know the training that's like that on the board, the one you hear about, like, man, I'd love to get that. But it's like only so-and-so's seem to get it. Or there's like, it comes up and then they don't have the funding for coverage. So like principals back off it. Like, there's always some little kind of reason there. Like, you can't quite get to it. So
Yeah, well, Gary works in our secondary schools. So, Gary, jump in if you've heard. Is this like at your school? Are there people in the building who have this certification, qualification, whatever you want to call it? I don't know
mhm.
because I'm not in the secondary school, but you would think that at the secondary school I'm connected to, you would think that the teachers would have this kind of training because we're dealing. It just seems like when you filter down the students that end up working in our building, our buildings, I should say, they have a lot of layers that have been peeled away. So it's like we get to the raw child at the center, and there's a
Yeah.
lot going on there, right? Because it's so intense. I know in high school when you've got a thought 1,500 kids, you may not be able to get to that raw part, but I guess those schools filter out those kids and they end up in alt ed, so to speak. But anyway, you'd think that in my building, I keep saying building, in my locations, there would be people would have this, but I've never heard of it. And I'll have to ask around about it in my world. Even I'd love to have something like this if I'm going house to
Imagine,
house.
because 'cause you're mobile. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
mobile, right? Yeah.
I just imagine showing up at a kid's house and then
Yep.
finding out that they want to kill themselves is like, oh shit. Like, well, I'm not leaving. Um, and I'm assessing the situation. Like, what if they don't stay with me in front of me? Like that's an easy 911 call right there. There's a lot of layers there, right?
Mhm.
Like, yeah, what if I I go to their house, they're like, I want to kill myself. Oh shit. Okay. Hey, come on outside. Let's keep chatting while I pull my phone out and try to get help. Like, no, I'm not coming out. Oh, for God's sake. Okay, that's a 911 call instantly. Um, just yeah, I think to myself, it would be pretty sweet if I had some training around that. But
What was
yeah.
also cool about it was, the impact it the so this whole notion that we have about making mistakes and
Mm.
the importance of making mistakes, talk about being in a rarefied state where you like, it seemed like you don't want like, you don't wanna make a mistake, but here's the catch: when you're in the training, you have to make the like you have to make the mistakes. And I'll say the crew that I was in was so trusting and everybody really helped each other to try and there was one part where when we were in the final quarter of our training on the last day and we went through role playing where we were caregiver and individual that was thinking of killing themselves. So and you got to decide, you could work with whoever you wanted and you sort of decide who was in each of the roles. So sometimes it was like friend and teacher, sometimes it was like parent and it was child. Like everyone got to pick who was each and you had to flip. So whatever group you're in, you did it one side, one style through. And it's improv, like you're kind of just working through the story. So you had to be kind of generous when you were the individual that was considering suicide so that you gave enough to help the actual caregiver kind of go through their process. But what was really cool about it is that the trainers were very clear. They said, look, you are welcome to tap out for a moment and ask questions and then tap back in. So go in and out of role. And you don't often see this happen in any sort of PD where the questions the questions that were asked when people needed support were it was to the group. It wasn't to the instructors. So you think about that shift for a moment. Like when you're in the classroom and one kid gets up to go help the other kid, you have to sometimes almost take a moment to go, like to not say, hey, yo, yo, sit down. Like you have to sort of really park your teacher mindset. And I'm not saying sometimes even in your head, you're like, what's that kid doing? And they're like, oh, they're going to help that other kid. Right. You kind of, so in our classroom, as a whole group of educators, like for the educator just to talk to the crew and say openly, I don't know what to do here. Can you help me out? And then all of a sudden, one's like, I might ask this question. I might ask this question. It was like the call the friend moment. Do you want to be a millionaire? But right there in the room. And it was beautiful. Like it was really beautiful to see people helping each other that way. And again, another layer within this training that I haven't experienced readily. This willingness to help, not just steamroll with your own story, but to actually be generous and help the individual work through their process upstage. It was on stage. It was a very generous training that way.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank
Mhm.
you for sharing. If it's okay with you, I want to shift gears
Do
into
it. Do it.
our experience last night. So last night, May 19th, 2023, was Foodapalooza in
Mhm.
Waterloo. Chris came to town. Santa Clough came to town,
Santa.
and It was epic. We hit some food places, had some good bites.
Some milestones too.
Yeah, some milestones. So we had the most people ever join us for our tour, um, which was awesome. I um, I have ideas floating around in my head for the video I'm gonna put together around the food experience. Um, it was just a lot of fun. Not only was it awesome to have good food with good people, the conversation was fire last night. I felt like
Mhm.
there was a, a lot of like high level talk. What I mean by that is like lots of talk on tech, AI, um, living, and not just what you have for breakfast this morning type of thing, right? Like, you dumped into the wellness that you're engaged in right now and your process, and people were listening. People were engaged. Like we were engaged the whole time. So,
Yep.
yeah, the food was awesome. The company was excellent. It was great.
Mhm.
Foodapalooza, May 2023 in Waterloo region.
Foodapalooza. Yeah, the word that comes to mind for me is intentional. Like it just felt we're in the room, we're having food together, we're just that big dinner table that just the conversation just has really nice ups and downs and quiets, and you have your moment, the small group, and then back to the large group, and then um back to small group stuff, and then everyone had kind of like some of their small moments just kind of like sitting there, full, like you could sort of go back to self again and think about, wow, this is kind of delicious, this thing that I'm eating right here. So yeah, there was so much of that just kind of cracking off all the time. Very cool. Very cool. And yeah, like the milestone as far as, we had, this was the most people, um which was it made it sort of like it did make it kind of a different feel, right? Like, because all of a sudden we have to start talking a little bit about logistics to a degree. Like, okay, like we got more people here because the process of us eating is kind of like everyone sort of chips in to a degree, but you have to get people on board with agreeing to do that. Like, okay, make sure that we're kind of covering. And it kind of flowed really well. And people, I think, were cool with the choices. I like that too. No one complained about, oh, why are we trying this? And you walked away having spent a little bit of money, but it felt purposeful. So that's cool. I'm looking forward to whatever you end up, however the video looks. Um, yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, thanks, man. I have some ideas already about music and some of the effects that I'm thinking in it. Um, just floating around, which is part of my creative process. So I
Mhm.
enjoy that. We are going to shift back to the training you were referring to because Rochelle has a comment, and welcome, Rochelle. Um, Unfortunately, due to the increased anxiety in our children, this training would be good for someone to have in elementary school also. I
Mhm.
completely agree 100%. I don't think it should just be limited to secondary. I think all sites where there are children, um, like alt ed, um, elementary, secondary, well, Lutherwood, like all of them, and I think anybody who works with kids that's mobile. So I'm being a little bit selfish here, but if I'm out in the field and I encounter this, um, I just think to myself, the first thing I think is I'm a little bit more out in the wind. Like I don't have anybody around me. I don't have any adults to help me do this or whatever. So it's like it'd be cool to have that formalized kind of training. Gary says he's sure that the youth care and social workers are trained, but the broader community could benefit as well. I agree with you, Gary. Um, this youth care, I would hope that they would be trained somehow, some way in this because um, they are mobile within the school with the kids that they work with. And the social workers for sure, but bro, I got to tell you this, working with social workers, they're mobile. Like they're rarely around when you actually need them in front of you. And I don't mean that as a criticism. I just mean
That's the
like for
reality.
it's yeah, if I need a social worker, um I'm going to text the social worker that works with me or some of the other ones that I know, but they're not going to magically appear in front of me as I'm dealing with a student. In fact, one of my biggest pet peeves in my work is that it seems to me like in my role, I'm exposed to the kids every single day, all the time. And the minute they hit me with something that is like a social work related matter, I pass that on, but it's not dealt with fast enough. And I think it's because I'm always with the kids, so it seems like I'm always in it and nobody else is because it's not their job to be. But I'm not a social worker. So yes, social work, the social workers are getting training all the time. Like I'll get a text from one of the social workers I work with saying, "I'm not going to be out today. I'm in the office. We're doing training." Okay, awesome. Um, so I wish I had a little bit more in this area so that I could help be patchwork if needed. Because I have no issue if I'm standing with a kid and a kid tells me something, whatever it is, and I can't get to a superior or someone who knows more fast enough, I am calling 911. I don't care about anything else except send somebody to me that is trained to deal with this now, whatever it is, right? Like, because usually the model for me is the kid tells me something. Okay, I inform the social worker, I inform the parents, I inform the principal. Like I do my duty. I I patch it as best as I can. We're not talking suicide. If it's suicide, that's a whole other thing. But whatever the situation is, I patch it with really badly, right? Like meatball surgery type of thing. And then it's like I call everybody in who knows what to do or think they know what to do. And then I move on with my day type of thing. But the next day I'm back with the kid. And I
Mhm.
feel like I've got 1,000 band-aids and I'm constantly applying them because I don't have the skill or the time or the expertise to actually give them what it is they need so we can heal that wound instead of continuously put band-aids on. So I'm constantly putting band-aids on, referring to others saying, "Hey, I just gave them more fresh band-aids, but like can we do something more here?" And then roll out the red tape, right? Then so saying all that, I've come to the conclusion that I'm really good with band-aids. So I've become more skilled at how to apply them, how to remove them, when to put them on, because that's
Do
what
you
I
re
do.
do you remember me one of our episodes way back in the day, and I love this as a this is I love this idea of the crash kits that we carry.
The crash
Um,
kits.
yeah, I think you and we talked about that. I did like a probably an EDU blog post about that, and I anchored it to back in the day when we had the blackout way back in the day. What was that? 2003, the one that went on quite. I know, 20 years ago now, right? I think
The
it's
ice storm,
2003.
right? The ice storm?
No, no, in the
Oh, no.
summer.
Oh, the
It was
summer blackout. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the big one, right? The ice storm was another one, but that wasn't as big as that other one. So at that time, I was still running restaurants, right? So I was running that restaurant down in the Eaton Center, and we actually just prior to that, we had a downtown blackout. This is back when they were still when they. So here's a mind blower. I was working downtown restaurants when they were building Young Dundas Square. So when they were doing that construction on that corner, they hit a gas line on that northeast corner of the Eaton Center when they were doing the construction. And the safety protocol is that all the power within a certain space had to be shut down. So they blacked us out within a localized area because the potential for the gas igniting. I'm going to go the obvious that must have been what it was. So this was about a month before. I'll say a month before, but it was long enough before because the restaurant that I was at, we had a live wood fire, like a charcoal, like our grill, our barbecue was we had to feed it with wood. And that's very different to manage than just a gas grill, which you could just turn off. You actually have to put out a fire. Literally put out a fire. Like it's not a metaphor. We're actually having to put out the fire. And the implications of putting out the fire, just from a business perspective, is that you needed to use things to make it wet. So we were actually having to wet the fire, which meant we knew we wouldn't be able to reopen right away using the grill because the drying process and the cleaning process, once it's been wet, we would do that at night and let it dry overnight. We'd come in the morning and we're good again. So we knew we didn't have like 7 hours to let the grill all dry up. So we had there were a lot of complications that happened when they did that construction right away. And that's where this idea of the crash kit came out of, because we then right away said, okay, as a team, bar service, floor service, kitchen, we need to decide like what is our emergency shutdown protocol when this happens outside of our power. And we had a storage room set up with like our you think about it, like your markers, your calculators, your flashlights, your extra batteries. It was like we became like doomsday preppers, but just for the restaurant. And we had all this extra stuff. And then part of our weekly check-in was to make sure that stuff was still all good. There hadn't been any leaks. We had an inventory for the inventory. So we had a redundancy for the actual crash kit to make sure that everything was still good. And I think about this crash kit, and I'm thankful for this idea of crash kit thinking, because then a month later we had the blackout and we were able to shut down the grill faster. Now, also understand, above that grill is an HVAC system. HVAC system is that thing that sucks the smoke out of your restaurant. As soon as the power goes out, the HVAC goes off. So now we have smoke billowing out into the restaurant. We have to evacuate clients that are in there eating. So it's like the crash kit, it was awesome to go through it, because the things that you do automatically, some of that worked, but we had to rethink some of our other stuff. Like the lights go out too. So anything that you think you can do with the lights on, you have to really think about. Now we have to do it in the dark until we get our flashlights. So I love this idea of the crash kit. And I love the idea of the crash kit relative to your job, because the crash kit is critical when you don't have, like, thinking about crash kit is a critical when you don't have access to whatever resources you normally would. So if you're operating out of your car, part of your crash kit, and I think you've talked to, your lunch is part of your crash kit, but it's low level. In the case I can't stop and I pick something up. In the moment that I notice I'm hungry, I have a sandwich. In the moment that I notice that I'm tired, I have coffee. In the moments that I notice that a kid has suicidal thoughts, I have, okay, now you're in this different zone, and you're in this zone where you're working out of your car. So that's, who's on your phone that you're going to call? What tools do you have of communication? What about your wellness? What did you do on a regular basis to ensure that you are a calm, relaxed individual when you encounter an emergency? Hell, that's a crazy question to ask, but that's part of that as well. How do you self-reg before, during, and after a moment when you normally would be lit up and triggered too? Like, all of these things fall into the crash kit. And you being a mobile representative of the school board, I think thinking about the crash kit is critical. It's critical. And at low level, if you got your coffee, maybe that's like step one of your crash kit. But I can only imagine the length of that list. I think you and I touched on this a little bit way back, maybe last year, about what does the mobile office look like? Like, what do you have in your car? Your binder, your paper copy of things, that mobile office thing. I like this. This is cool.
So this funny that you talk about the mobile office, because I had
Hmm.
an experience yesterday that I actually burst out laughing on the street in front of a kid's house. So
Tell
let
me.
me okay. And then there are a couple of comments here from
Hmm.
Gary and Rochelle that I want to get to.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So a student and I agreed that I would be visiting this student Friday morning. Okay. So I get to the house. Um, there's no doorbell. So I walk up to the house and I knock on the door really as loud as I can,
Hmm?
and nobody comes to the door. So I knock on the door really loud again, nobody comes to the door. Now the student and I were supposed to sit outside today. Sorry, yesterday, the morning of.
Mhm.
So I go back to my car and I had left my phone in the car. I text his father and I say, "Hey, I'm at the house. Nobody's answering the door. Can you please inform me, like, how did the morning go? Is the student supposed to be going somewhere?" Just to ask some questions, right? Like, fill me in, dad. While while I'm waiting for the dad to text me back, I've popped my trunk. I've got my lawn chair out. Um, and I told you I bought some bran muffins the other day that I was really craving, so I cracked open
Delicious,
the bran.
delicious.
I'm standing at the bottom of the driveway. I'm parked on the street. There are people walking their dogs and stuff, probably wondering what's going on. My trunk's open, the chair's out, and I'm eating a raisin bran muffin as I stand there. One hand's on the muffin, one hand's on the phone, and I'm just biting into the muffin and I'm looking at the phone.
Mhm,
And I burst out laughing because I'm like, That's my office. This is my space. Like, I have a chair, I have food, I have my digital device. The car takes me from place to place. I have other things, like I've got my laptop if I need to use it. I've even got like a special like power unit that I can plug my laptop into when I'm with my car so I can use it. I can get internet off my phone. Like, it's literally I have everything. I've got the water to drink after I eat the dry muffin. Like, it's all there. I've
mhm,
got a baseball hat, a change of shoes, my umbrella. Like, it's because I don't know if I'm gonna roll up to the next house and the kid's gonna be like, "Can we walk to school?" Yeah,
mhm.
I
Yeah,
need
I
to have
can.
I need to have the right shoes. I'm an old man. Like, I can't walk 30 minutes in the wrong footwear. It's not gonna be good for me. So yeah, I have it all. Um, so yeah, people were walking by and I know they were looking. But what more? I've got my lanyard, I've got my ID, I've got my parking pass in the front that says what I work for. Like, there's no hiding. It's all there. If
Mhm,
somebody if somebody comes up to me and starts questioning me, I have a business card without giving away student information. Without I can just give them the card and say, "I'm working. Here's my information. I'm working. Go away. You know why I'm here now. I'm not going to tell you any more than that." Um, so at the end of this, I finished a muffin. I sit in the chair. I'm on the street. I'm on the street. Like, I'm just right behind my car. And I text the dad again, like, "Hey, I didn't hear from you. I'm going to have to leave now." I text the other parent to find out if the student is with them. They say no. Okay, pack up and leave. But I had I laughed. I burst out laughing, looking at my trunk and seeing I have everything I need at the moment. And if something new happens and I discover I need more or different, then I'll adjust. In the winter, in the dead of winter, I had boots. I had, because I'm mobile, I don't wear a big jacket in the car because I'm constantly in and out of my car.
mhm,
So I'm warm enough, but I've got a big jacket in the car in case I need to walk to school or walk somewhere.
mhm.
Toque, gloves, like it's there. So if a kid won't go to school, okay, I'll walk them. Okay, they'll go with you. Got to get my gear on. There's a process for that too, eh? Can I dump into that for a minute?
Of
The
course.
process of if a student tells me they're going to go to school with me and we're going to walk, that activates a protocol. So um I I get to the house and I text the parents or talk to them live if they're there or call them to say, "Do you permit this to occur?" 100% of the time they've said yes, yes, go.
Mhm,
Make them go to school, okay? Then I email my principal and the principal of the school and say, "I'm at the student's house. Parent has given me permission to be there and to walk them to school. This is the route I'm taking. We're leaving now." Then when I
mhm,
get to school, I email those same people because I can't always see the principal in the building. They might be busy. Drop the kid off, email everybody and say, "The student is now at the school. I'm leaving. I'm walking back to my car." And then we move on. Just so everybody knows, this is what Roland's doing. This is where Roland is. This is the route Roland took.
Yep.
as transparent as it can be, right? And that's it. So but you and I learned that I had to create a protocol for that after a conversation I had with my wife about walking a kid to school. My wife started to ask a lot of good questions. I'm like, whoa, those are all good questions. Okay, need to create something here because this is probably going to happen a lot. I can't just be on the fly, right? And it's funny because as we're leaving the house, I'll say to the kid, whoa, hold on. I got to finish this email. There's a friggin' blizzard. And I'm like, "Tick, tick, 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 tick." Well, that's part of the protocol. I'm not going anywhere until I've sent that email and everybody knows we're departing now. And this is what we're doing. Thanks for listening to me. I love the
Yeah,
crack.
yeah.
Yeah. Gary, Gary's cognizant that the student struggling is going to choose who they're going to begin to open up to. I don't disagree with that at all.
Hmm.
Rochelle wants to know if the trainers gave any strategies for the person intervening to unpack what happened for their own mental health. Being the person who is opened up to is difficult.
Yeah, I jumped on that one really early in the process, and I came at it from the point of view of, some of the other PD sessions that I've enjoyed and been at, and then you just feel like everything about the moment dissolves, like you're just kind of released into the system and you never get to come there isn't enough um opportunity to come back as a group and kind of say like how did it go, right? Like that sort of like year later check in, like how are things going with these tools? You're just the litmus is in some ways is which is unfortunate, it's this abstract litmus, like is the system better because of you? Which you can have that, that benevolent kind of like joy, but like technically are you still good? Like are you still good in this role? Are you still good with the tool that you're using? um Once it was, you do your unboxing, did it match up? Did the experience match up relatively close to what you were told it was going to look like? And I think within that, Rochelle, it's a good question because of around the wellness factor and being a caregiver that is a um it is a unidirectional relationship. Like you are there with an intent to do something, which is give care. And you can sort of argue, not argue, or sort of like promise all you want that there's something like you're enriching your own self in that, but there's a cost. And we know this. We know this spending time with any of our students and at our work. Um, so I asked the question, I'm like, do any of these cohorts come back together and sort of discuss? And they did say flat out, they said that really is up to how your board rolls with it, like what your board decision. They say the actual so the deliverer of this training was a they're trainers that are actually they are staff in our board. So our mental health lead, who no longer does direct practice and service, now does sort of consultancy, policy, and programming, and still does this training. Like this, what they are doing, like this kind of consultancy with teachers, is kind of like that is their practice now. But they're like at SO level in our board. They're the ones that are the coordinating stuff like this. But as far as the direct service stuff, this is one of the things that they hung on to because they feel lit up about it. And then the social worker was actually a trainer in training, which was interesting to see what it looks like someone kind of newly doing it. They're just like in their first year. And our mental health lead, her name's Patricia, she said she'd been doing it for 20 years. So it was interesting to see the different kind of flow between the two. Um, but there was no I will say this session, it came up, but the directive within it was like you're gonna have to kind of navigate that yourself. Like what is it that you need to be able to um it was funny. It kind of fell into a bucket of topics that they said that's a great topic, but we can't talk about that right now. We have too many other things to get to. And it wasn't that it was shut down. It was that write that down, take that back to your school, take that back to your colleagues, check in with your other assist trainers that are in your school, build something, support each other. But they said the actual formal wellness part um, is very much kind of in your hands to be able to say what it is you need. And they said for every assist trainer, it's different. Sorry, every assist practitioner, it's different. Some people are able, like they're able to exist in the tools, and they can maintain some detachment, so they're able to sort of kind of just go about their day afterwards. And then there's others that are taking a sick day the next day because it is that intense, right? I think Rochelle's question is also good because it I think it also forces me to think about how other support structures where they're the ones that are called in to deal with escalations. I think of our support staff and other teachers that are trained in CPI, and my board, that's crisis prevention intervention. So it's the practice and skills of de-escalation, and then sometimes having to put hands on a student to keep them safe, keep them from harming themselves. And there's holds, and there's traveling holds that you do to have, if you have to move the student to a different space. And then there's also protocols for clearing the space and managing the space. So I know that my team in our debriefs are just not tactical and strategic and, evaluative. It also is emotional wellness and mental hygiene. We include that in our discussion. And we completely understand within, like in our own escalations, and I know I'm shifting away from the assist thing, but in our own escalations, if there's staffing available, because you never know when this is going to happen. Again, the crash kit is important. You're just prepared. You're prepared for the moment, not hoping for it, but you're ready if it happens, as ready as you can be. We were talking, my CYW that I work with, we were talking the other day that there was a CYW in the room, and there was a student was in a hold for quite a long time. And it was necessary. It was cool and calm, but that's exhausting for everybody, right? To actually have a student in a hold, if you've been in that scenario, the adrenaline, the everything, like you come out of it and you're just like, how do I recharge from this? Like, and if heaven help you if it's like 9 a.m. and it happened right in the front of the day, because you still have to navigate the rest of your day. Um, so one of the individuals that was a part of the team, they were in the room. They were actually going around to each of the individuals and like, are you okay? They actually had a water bottle, and they're going up to people, like somebody, they're water falling for someone, like, here, have a drink, have a drink. And the person was just tilting their head back and getting water, because when you're in one of those escalations, in this particular case, you're geared up with the armor. So they had like, and it's basically polyester, it's so hot. You wrapped yourself in saran wrap, and you're in a hold with a student. So they were and someone was coming up like, how's your shoulder? I know you have a shoulder injury. Okay, your back, if you don't straighten your back. So this is a CYW walking around and giving wellness tips in the moment. Straighten your back a little bit. Like, it'll feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it's better for your back to be straight and uncomfortable now. Because if you're in this for another 30 minutes, your lower back, like, you won't be able to bend over. So that was the recommendation. I know, Rochelle, I went off, but the recommendation in this particular case was make sure that you are clearly articulating to the leaders in your school what you need in order to be this person in this role. And the mental health said lead basically, push back, like, stay in that conversation, because you're in a critical role. So use that as leverage. This is my job. This is what I will now do. This is the service I will provide. Here's the cost. And I know this because I know the training. I know a little bit about the moment, and I know how I'm going to be after that. And that would qualify on our board. I guess the tricky part in this, that would qualify as a sick day if you had to. Like, that would qualify. You could tap out that way. I guess the broader conversation is that if something like this happens, you're fatigued, hurt, not mentally well as a result of doing your job, should that even be coming out of your bucket, right? That's a good political kind of like conversation during contract times. So I love the question. It's a great question.
In my opinion, teachers, the whole debrief process never works the way that it's explained it will. I'm not talking about, like, I'm just talking in all my experiences of having to deal with situations
Mhm.
where where you're told there will be a debrief, there's supposed to be a debrief after when you're trained. It's
Yeah.
like the debrief doesn't happen because of all kinds of restraints. There's no time. There's no coverage, there's no this, there's no that. It's like, then stop telling us it's going to happen, because it doesn't. Seriously, it's like,
Yeah.
it's very upsetting to me to think that
Well, we know it's a critical step.
it is a, yeah, big time. And it's like, you're being trained professionally, and the professionals are saying it's required, and yet it doesn't happen.
Mhm.
So why do we keep, we're going to pretend like we're going to ignore that, but then the minute we start doing that is the minute we're permitted to start ignoring whatever we want. For me, that's the slippery slope in my little brain. If there's a process and a procedure that says this, and people cherry pick what they have and use, then what stops me from cherry picking any other process and procedure? Because you're doing it, and you're the one who's supposed to be ensuring that I'm debriefed after this hold or whatever situation is. Yeah, that's that's for my post-retirement book about some of the BS that's been experienced in my career.
Mm.
Um, Lots of fantastic moments, lots of BS too. I'm not going to pretend that doesn't happen.
Yep.
Rochelle says that they offer any advice on how to help other students who may have witnessed or heard the situation.
Nope. And I would just say, in that particular case, and as I say these words, I feel like I wish I could address it, not this session. And I can, part of now having doing the training, a question like that, I can now, I now really do get from being in camera, like in the room getting the training. It was not, that is not, um that's not your focus. I just say that in, and I'm not saying it as in it shouldn't be. I'm just saying, again, you are sitting in front of an individual, a specific individual that is you've noticed, and now they have declared that they're about to kill themselves. Everything else falls away. And it's not that that's not important, but I think that particular situational management, I think that there's other tools, there's other, because here's the other thing too, you're not including them in the discussion when you're with the individual. Like, you're not, like, even if you, I'll say, so I'm trying to just kind of address this from the point of view as what's the most useful information to help you keep this kid safe right now, for now. And I would say, you know, even thinking about who else noticed this in that moment isn't useful to you in that moment, because you don't get to leave that relational moment of actually working through this conversation with the kid. After the fact, I think it then becomes, you know, I guess you can talk with the other kids. Like, once you have an assurance that you've kept this kid safe for now, you can talk to whoever you want and support whoever you want. I think that compassionate support, I think we have tools and places and people that can have those conversations with the kids. I do believe that the idea of like the caring adult in your school then can step into that role. Who is it? That was very upsetting for you, Jimmy. I get it. Like, noticing that, um, you know, who Mel? Who's our other student? I want another student. That Mel was having some behavior and saying some things that can be frightening when we hear that. I've talked with Mel. Mel is okay for now. Mel is safe. Tell me, Jimmy. Okay. Like, you can do those counseling and those if you're capable, if you can. And I think we do have tools to help students already on the books if they've noticed or maybe have experienced something that could be perceived as traumatic. It could just be that they didn't understand it. Like, why would someone say something like that? And then you sort of decide what the education piece happens, right? I mean, that falls into a whole other mental wellness kind of like broader school context about what the discussions already look like at the school about self-harm and suicide. So just to answer a question that hasn't been asked, but it was kept on coming up, even when, so people wanted to put into the same conversation that self-harm and suicide are the same. And our instructor, not the same, but their instructor said, self-harm, if it becomes part of the discussion towards suicidal ideation, then it's useful. But this idea that because an individual is self-harming, that they're having suicidal ideation is false. And she went through a whole list of things like why someone might be self-harming that are not uh causal. Like it's not clearly causal. So, and I know no one in the room was asking this, but it was something that kept on popping up. Like we want to put the two together. Again, I kept on being back to this singularity about my purpose in this conversation is to keep you safe for now. Everything that we're discussing, every question that I ask, every little thing that I notice is to keep you safe for now. And then if I can get you to sort of like attach to a future goal or an emotional thing of positivity or a constructive space that you're willing to build a plan to stay around for because you have indicated you like guitar, you like video games, you like AI, then that is your singular purpose. That type of first aid. And she kept on saying in the exact same way, if a kid walks up to you and you see they need a band-aid, you're going to hand them a band-aid. Like it has to be that clear. So good stuff. Very good stuff. Stunning and good.
Who knew that we were going to get this deep into it? I mean, it's an important topic.
Mm-hmm.
It raises a lot of questions. I like that. I love actually that you keep coming back to exactly what you were trained to do. It's awesome because
It's so tough for divergent thinkers and compassionate individuals. It's tough to keep coming back to that because that leads to the next step. And you're that's what you're working towards. This isn't a social conversation.
I like that.
This isn't a check-in. This isn't even necessarily a feel good, and it's no assurance. It's no assurance that things will be better. It's very criterion driven, and we're just going to work on the exact thing that's in front of us. So for me, being very divergent and a noticer and just kind of like constantly like, well, what if? What about this? What about da-da-da? Like to not be that type of a participant in it, that's I have to do work on that because it ain't a freaking podcast, right? And it's not a stage performance, and it ain't one of my poems.
Right.
So
Right.
that was good. We don't often have silent moments on the pod.
The Decoded Podcast.
Decoded podcast. Can I pivot just a quick and then we can decide if this is our out?
Yep.
So me shifting to the new job, and this will come out more and more. So me getting a new job, new school. And this is a hard pivot for any listeners out there, but we'll do. This is how we roll, right? Like, and we're open. You want to ask us other questions, you want to sort of connect with us. Happy to talk. Rochelle, Gary, if you've got thoughts, you got questions, you want me to connect you with the resources, the people that train me. I'm findable on chasing squirrels on Twitter. You reach out to Chids. I'm fine if you pass along any of my details if they want to reach out and talk to me. I'm cool with that. Because I will actually reveal I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, I want to be a trainer. Like I'm thinking to myself, like I want like, and I added an element to my, like a professional goal. I was like, this is so good. I would love to be able to be someone that could share this moving forward. I would love to. I would feel it's such a deep sense of purpose in doing it. That's the effect this training had on me. So, and who knows, maybe that's part of my future job. But so in the short term, I'm, moving to a new school next year. So I'm really, I don't know if the word's enjoying. It's not really enjoying, but it's, what's a more neutral way of saying enjoying? Like you're enjoying something. What word would you use instead? Because enjoying kind of makes it sound like fun, but it's not fun.
Well, can you put it in the sentence and give me some
Yeah.
context, and I'll
So
see what I can do?
I'm enjoying the process of sharing the news that I'm transitioning to a new school, that I'm transferring to a new school. Now, that's what I say, like, it's complicated. It's complicated. The community classroom that I work with, the teachers that I connect with, the friends and colleagues at work, like the layers, as you say, there's layers. And when I found out that I was going to transfer, which was just at the top of so I interviewed last week and then found out on Monday that I'm transferring. It becomes, there's a certain reveal party that kind of happens with that, and making sure that, well, sorry, I won't even say making sure. For me, it was there were individuals that I wanted to make sure I there were people that had to know, and then there were the people that need that they just absolutely had to know. And then there's others that needed to know, but they're not like on the first layer, but they're still important that they got the information because they're going to be in spaces where if it's mentioned to them, it causes complicated conversations. Like I wanted to get to those first. So it's sort of like I knew my boss, I knew my family, and then my boss, I want to be clear there. And then there was my tight team, so the support staff that I work with. Now they were already part of the conversation. They knew I was considering and interviewing, so it was just kind of like getting to that point and saying it did happen. I'm not going to be here next year. And then it's sort of like, okay, so who's the next layer out from that? I decided the next layer out from that were the parents of the students that I work with. And then from there, it's been the committees and the other commitments that I have at the school. Um, and then at the tail end, I had the students. So this all happened this week. And me being out with the training for the 2 days this week, I had the conversation. It wasn't possible for me to have the conversation until yesterday morning during period one. So I had the conversation with them and we had and what was, it was freaking cute. So this was awesome. And it took me a second to actually, I glitched. I glitched for a second because when I told the students, one of them said, in all seriousness, so next year we're going to be at this new school. So me saying that I was going to move, I guess that's a measure of we're tight enough. They were like, oh, okay, I guess and it's like in a different city. It's like a 20-minute drive away. But it was just so my CYW was at the back of the class and we were kind of like, it took us a second to clue into what the kid was saying. And we're like, oh no, it's just me. Just me. It's just me. Because I didn't say we are transferring. I actually said I'm transferring, but they heard that the whole class is coming with me to the school. I thought that was a beautiful moment. Um, so I had the conversation with them yesterday. They had a lot of questions. They were like, I said, here's the things that are known. Here are the things that are unknown. So I gave them the two lists and, which is useful for them. And I said, well, I'll keep this list. It'll be part of our agenda. And as we know things, I'll add it to it so that you can review it. You can sort of like, again, it's priming them. Now, some people I've only said once or twice. I don't often talk about my specific context in teaching, but so I'm in an ASD classroom, community classroom, grade 9 and 10s. We're a small crew, and I've been working with them for 2 years. So there is a familial connection there, right? Like we're tight. So I knew that in the process of letting them know about what my process was, that I wanted to be a part of the transitional conversation. I had individuals that said, like, why are you going to tell them so soon? Like, just wait on it. Like, you're going to cause mayhem. And I thought to myself, but that's the good mayhem, because talking about transition and specifically like social relationships, what does it mean to leave them in a good way has kind of become my mini inquiry. And I feel really good about that. I feel really good. I feel really good about potentially making them sad, but I think this is it's a good it's a good echo of for me to consider, because back in the day, I have told you this story. I was a part of I would say even still a pretty important graduation committee over a few years at my first school. And I was a part of putting together an art piece for the graduates that were based on the character matters. And it involved sort of like there was photography involved. There was some digital manipulation of photography. There was mounting the pictures and frames. Like it was a good art task that myself and the art teacher did. And as I came into a year, I was just like, you know what? I think I want to move on. I want to go on to like something else. I don't want to do this anymore. And when I said that to the committee, and everyone knew how to do the jobs, but there was no on-ramping to it. I just kind of told them one day that I'm not returning for the committee. I'm not going to be back to this. And somehow that made it back to my administrator. And the administrator said, obviously, I can't stop you from leaving. It's your choice. Like, these are voluntary committees. He said, but here's the leadership question. Um, I can see that you're ready to go, but is your group ready for you to go? Like, is your committee ready for you to go? And it's funny, I still to this day have to work to remember that about the importance of priming people and the importance of helping people with your, like, even as I'm trying to sort of figure out the ramifications of me leaving this school, other people may have their own process with this that I'm influencing either indirectly or directly. So when I say enjoying, I think what I'm enjoying, but it's maybe more what I'm enjoying is that I'm seeking satisfaction in these relationships. I'm seeking understanding in this. And I like that process of saying goodbye. It's tough, but I like that process because it feels rich. Like I've tried to set it up so it will be rich and there'll still be generative and positive conversations to come out of this. And that even if I'm at a different school, I'm trying to establish this isn't an abandonment. And it's a different way for me to think because I'm always so sort of forward thinking as in here's the thing that I want to work towards, go for it, Clough. And just kind of like blindly move towards it. So taking into account other people as actually being there as part of this process is good work for me. It's a good glitch.
I appreciate your sharing on all that. I think for me, at the end of the day, you just need to do what's going to work for you. It's
Mhm.
a selfish perspective. It sounds like you have a good handle though on your layers of involvement, the people you feel need to know and when they need to know. It's all good,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, you're making a shift. It's got to work for you. I think it's hilarious and cute that the student would say that, like, "Oh,
Is that awesome?
we're starting at a new school."
Yeah.
Like I
Field trip.
that is that's a testament, I guess, to the culture you and your students have created in your room.
Mhm.
Um, and how that student feels connected, right? Like, oh, shoot, our teacher's moving, which means we're moving too. Okay, like the innocence of that, but also the for me
Earnestness.
that connection. It's like
Yeah.
that's a tight connection you have with that kid. So that's friggin' awesome.
Mhm.
Um, it's it's interesting. I reflect on me telling certain students I'm going to be working again with you next year. At the very least, I'm going to be around at the beginning to be to walk with you in your transition to your new grade, particularly the eights going to nines. And some of them are like they. I see a sense of relief on their face, and then the others are like, "Are you're serious? Like you're, the end of the school year doesn't mean we connecting?" I'm like, "No, in September I will." I'm like, the first couple of days of school, you won't see me because I'll be getting my bearings and kind of setting up my new process for the year with my principal. But yeah, after that, I'm gonna be checking in on you to make sure you're going, see how you're feeling. Do I need to refer you to the social worker, the guidance counselor? Like, yeah, I'll be around. Because at one point they're like, okay, what does this look like next year? And I'm like, I don't know. They're like, what do you mean you don't know?
Mhm.
I'm like, well, I'm in a position where, somebody could decide I'm not needed anymore. This work isn't needed anymore. And it's funny because then they look at you funny. I'm like, I'm not messing with you. If somebody above me says, okay, Chidiak's job is done, I'm not going to walk around pretending it's not. It's the reality. If they
Yeah.
decide this is not useful anymore, then they'll take the funding away and I'll go somewhere else. But so it was there was like that time, that space where everybody's like, what's happening next year? It's like, well, if I'm around, this is the plan. If I'm not around, then that's why you have a guidance counselor and you have this and you have that. And parents, call the school, like advocate for your kid, do your job as a parent, right? But yeah, it makes me laugh because that's sweet. But then I see the other side sometimes where they're like, oh, are you seriously going to still be around? I'm like, yep, I am until you work me out of a job, which means you attend school every day and you move in the right direction. Then I'm gone. I'm not sticking around.
It's yeah.
Right?
I like the whole like I also am kind of in, and I guess I don't know. I need a better word for joy. I damn, I'll say enjoy. I enjoy also being able to say, here's what I know and here's what I don't know. And it's a really simple list. Like, and like sometimes when we do this as teachers, there's here's what we know, here's what I don't know, and then there's a list of stuff that you're just not prepared to reveal. It's not as simple as just like it's a no, a not no, because everything about this process will either be in one of those two columns, and not because I'm obscuring it. Like I can actually share it with them. So the other question they kind of asked, similar to what you're playing, like, who's the teacher next year? That's in the I don't know column yet. And for very sort of like a lot of technical reasons, I said, but as soon as I know, that's moving into the no column. I don't have to pause it all. I can tell you right away. I don't have to process out what classroom are we going to be in. That's in the we don't know yet. As soon as I do, I'm going to tell you. And I would and I will probably also tell them, because we're told, okay, here's the room, but it's not for sure. But here's the one that we're starting with. I would rather share that with the kids and say, look, here's where we're starting with. Because again, a transition, a thing about that I'm trying to work with the kids is not as much how do you move from the unpredictability of life to I'm capable of dealing with the unpredictability of life. Like it's kind of like because we know that change happens. I mean, you and I mean, that's your one, basic tenets of any sort of philosophical living. Change happens, and you can be a part of it, and it can just happen around you. And you have to decide. Hopefully, you have the ability to decide who you are going to be within that change, right? And the kids, for me, it's more important. It's not a shock to the system, but to sort of work through some of their struggles with the fact that stuff is happening outside of their control. Because I do feel like this is how life plays with you. So what are the tools to sort of navigate when you feel like whatever your perception of what was about to happen doesn't? And there's a whole lot of different examples you can use. But again, this comes back to me starting early with the kids so that I can be there to just, if they want mentorship, I'm there. If they just need some emotional, like, I'm with you, I hear you, I get this emotion too. Or if it's very tactical, as in I redirect them, it would be better if you tried thinking about it this way. So that's what's awesome about this. That's what I'm really enjoying. I feel like it's sort of bringing home some of my teacher tools that aren't definitely not curriculum based, they're community based. And when you think about your pedagogy from community based toolkits, you start to realize there are some pretty specific and clear differences in what you're doing there. Um, and I also love how it taps into my dad energy. Like it really does. It taps into my how I try and work with my own children at home to have them understand, good ways to navigate the world. So I like that.
I don't think there's anything wrong in talking about you feeling joy or being happy about it or whatever. It is just
Mhm.
it is what you feel and you just go with it. Um, you just do. I think do we have a couple of minutes to one more shift?
Yeah, do it.
So, okay, we last night was a lot of fun
Yep.
with the guys, Foodapalooza in Waterloo, going from place to place, having a small bite, and we talked a lot about AI.
Yep.
It just seems to be the topic these days. And as you know, I I I told you yesterday and I'll say it here for everybody. And maybe one day my kids will hear this. I don't know. Right? Maybe
That's almost the spirit. That's like the spirit of I think of what you're about to share, but go for it.
with the whole talk of AI,
Mhm.
as you know, I am obsessed, I would say,
Mhm.
with the idea that I wish that this type of thing existed in a user-friendly way when my father was alive, and that he had the wherewithal to I'd envelop it into his daily living so that I could benefit from it today, so that my kids could benefit from it today, so that I could hear and see my father again in a really cool way where it would feel like it was fluid, right? Like it's here, it's happening. Um, and I told you and Bomber yesterday that this obsession or this idea is so strong for me. It hits home right where it needs to, right where the marketers and all the people who want to take advantage of me, it gets they that arrow is in here hardcore.
Mhm.
I don't care. I told you this about the privacy issues, about the ethical issues. When it comes down to that, just that fine, have a hologram of my father appear in front of me, and I can ask him questions and he can answer me as if he were still here. I don't care about all those other layers that we do need people caring about, right? Um, I don't care. I just wish it would happen. Uh, and you said last night, we were talking about using images on the internet and then using Mid Journey, the AI art prompt creator,
Mhm.
to make something out of it, right? And I told you I don't have a lot of pictures of my dad. And
Mhm.
then this morning, before we started podcasting, I was feeding the bunny. I was in the dining room doing stuff, and I look up, and boom, there's a picture of my dad just staring at me.
Mhm.
I was like, "There's okay, so there's the image. So I need to grab that image, get it on the internet, and start playing with it." Because I told you
Mhm.
I've been trying to replicate my father using Midjourney, and it
But with
just
others' raw data. You're using other people's raw data. Like,
right,
whatever's findable, right? Like, you're using the
whatever's
open
findable.
source raw data, yeah.
But I'm like, there's gotta be a look. There's gotta be a
Mhm.
shape to the face, and I'm not finding it. I'm not getting it. Um, but maybe I will get that this weekend when I capture that image and use it. But all that to say is like when you that it's a danger zone.
Mhm.
To be in my space right now is a danger zone. And I think the people creating these things, the people who are doing these things to make money, right? To, I guess it's all about money. Discovery, that may be feeding them, right? I will need to discover what's next. I need to build what's next. But also, I believe it comes down to the bottom line of money.
Mhm.
To make money, to make things happen, we need to scrape they need to scrape the inside of my brain. They need to scrape the inside of your brain
Mhm.
to build these machines that can think faster, stronger than all of us, right? I'm acknowledging the danger. I'm acknowledging that I fully open my arms and say, take everything I have because your stuff's hitting me where it needs to
Mhm.
let me surrender everything to you. And then there's the whole it's I took this opportunity this morning to really enjoy the the activation of memory of my father. So
Mhm.
normally it ends up being like a sad kind of thing. Not this morning. This morning it was like I remember the good things. I remember the good messages I got from him. Um, and strangely enough, that picture that was staring at me was of him smiling, which most people smile for a camera. But it was just interesting how I explain that I'm going from when I usually have these thoughts, it's like a sad thing. But today, this morning, it's more of a joyful thing. So I wanted to just share that all those connections and conflict, it's like a mosaic in my mind. There's lightning and thunder in one corner, then there's vibrant colors in the other. And I'm trying to bring them just both together and be like, yeah, this can all happen and you can make of it what you will. But man, yeah, that hit me hard yesterday. Every time we talk about AI, and I think at the end of the day, at this very moment in time, I think part of my preoccupation with the topic is personally connected for me. So,
Mhm.
which, as you know, is a huge motivator for many people when there's a personal connection. So, yeah, I'll keep playing, I'll keep learning, I'll keep reading, I'll keep talking so that I guess my goal is to try to bring some of my past back in front of me, in a really cool kind of way. So maybe my kids will hear this someday. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to stumble upon season 6, episode 34, number 252.
That's I think some of the guys that were hanging with us and when we talked about um I think that was when we talked about uh how part of our podcast process, there's a great alliteration there, right? Our podcast process is also we're creating an artifactual breadcrumb trail to us as dads, as fathers, as uh husbands, as just individual dudes, as teachers, as humans, that we both have said, like, in so much as like we say, decoded is like about fatherhood, a big part of it has also been unpacking our own fathers, like just kind of talking and reminiscing about what we do and don't still have access to about that story. And last night, what was kind of mind blowing is like you and I have been immersed in that part of the discussion for like 6 years now, right? It pops up and we're like, oh, here's another layer. So we're like soaked in it, right? Like it's we're in touch with all the layers of how it exists. But I saw on one of the individuals that was hanging out with us last night when we talked about it from that perspective, they were just like, right? Like they're just like, what? And then I could see in their face them, it was the best I could say is like self-assessment, like what have I left for my child, right? Like what am I leaving? Because it was very much in that spirit of like this idea of an avatar. Like I mean, we could be very sort of like science fiction-y, speculative fiction, or just what are the artifacts if we make it really foundational. Any parent, how much of your story do your children have access to? And that includes, like, you and I are time traveling. We've told stories from when we were in elementary school, high school, what the like merit, like we've traveled through time in our lives as best as we can sort of like articulate and as safely as we can. And there's things that we've sort of talked about in bits and pieces that we deem to be safe, but I don't know if I've revealed all these sort of little thinking details to my children directly. You know what I mean? Like I because it just winds and wraps around itself like as our stories come out. And I could see the individual last night when we were talking about kind of our digital journey as also recognizing like it's a portfolio of us, like just me as a human. And if our children at some point decide to go through the hundreds of hours of stock footage, like we are feeding a future AI machine that could possibly present to our children a version of us that we crave to have of our own dad right now. And that's a powerful, powerful kind of little like reflective piece because neither one of our fathers, yours more so, like had the digital presence or the access or the technology to sort of potentially create the same way that you and I can, right? To actually sort of get like, I guess, our dads could have recorded stuff on cassettes. I guess that's the nearest, comparison, maybe a bunch of video footage, but to have a tool that could actually go seek those things and bring it together for you. Like that's where we're at. One of my kids when they're 50 years old to be able to put in a prompt and say, "Hi dad." And it just sort of puts together the avatar. It's like, "Hey kid, how you doing?" Or says whatever. I'd probably say, "Hey dude, how's it going? What's up today?" And it's going to be a similar voice because there's enough of that audio on there for the AI to be able to print that. And it's going to be someone that looks like me. Hell, you with a couple clicks made some pretty strong images of that. And it's just going to chat with them. And they're going to be able to say, remember back in 2030, remember when we were at that wedding? And it's gonna like, yeah, that was really cool. The whole family was together. That was fun. Remember the food? Like it's gonna take all this stuff and it's gonna put it right there in front. And I love the sort of the edges. Like you're trying to just like snuggle right up to that possibility. Like your front end. This is like the 1.0 kind of version of a very similar likely outcome 10, 15, 20 years from now that you're like setting the seeds now. It's pretty cool. And
I
and
th-
I think that's what was mind blowing. And you and I are just kind of riffing like this, and the individual's like, "Hey, it's like you're on a podcast right now." I'm like, "Yeah, this is just how we kind of like we riff on a thing, slightly speculative, but entirely grounded in what we're seeing right now and the tools that we're using." So
I think what a gift for us to think in a way, to have some vision on what this might look like for our kids in the future if they stumble upon this, which I suspect they would. Like I suspect at some point, I don't know, maybe it does take losing one of us to have them dig into it. I don't know. Maybe not. But whatever the case is, it's here.
we
There's
can't
lots of
deny the
data here.
truth. Yeah, we can't deny the truth of the body of work that is openly accessed. And if we just said, basics, say the stuff that we put onto the net is the grabbing ground for AIs. Like it just is. Like that's where it's going. Anything that is openly available is what it grabs. So we are knowingly contributing to that massive bucket of life experiences, of video, of looks at our beards at different lengths, to the different outfits that we're wearing, to even you wearing did you have your glasses on at the beginning of the pod?
I did, yeah.
So that's the moment. What? Dad wore glasses? We don't have any photos of dad wearing. No, but see, that's the
Yeah, yeah.
transport. That's the Easter egg. Dad wore glasses. Your one kid's, whatever. I want to say texting, but maybe could be a dated term. They're connecting with their other sibling. Like, did you know dad wore glasses? Like, what are you talking about? It's like, yeah, like
Or it
dad.
could be like, sorry.
No, but you see, like that's the what? I didn't know that.
Yeah, one of them says to the other, in this episode, Dad started with glasses on, and he talked about why he started with.
Maybe not. Maybe the avatar just one time when they're
Oh,
talking to them does like this, like they're talking, and then they just kind of like go, and then your kid's like, "Why'd you put on glasses, Dad?" Like, well,
right.
I sometimes wear glasses, sometimes I don't, which is exactly the behavior that you just demonstrated. And then your kid's like, "I didn't know that you sometimes wear glasses."
Yeah. Okay. Do you draw any art today? Get glitched. I love it. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. While it's funny, while you were doing that, I did produce some AI art images for Twitter
Nice.
during our conversation. I think I've gotten into, I'll tell you, I'm really enjoying interacting with people and then
Hmm.
grabbing their profile picture on Twitter and then responding with an AI generated image
Hmm.
um, of them based on that picture. I'm loving that. So Khalid this morning, Monty, um, I've provided a couple of those for them. You also, our conversation about suicide and
Hmm.
my father have me thinking about death, but not
Hmm.
in a dark way. And so I even created the Grim Reaper in a happy situation, thinking memento mori. Are we taking advantage of our opportunities? Because whether that mofo's smiling or not, he's going to come for us one day. So
I just saw the image of death. I don't know. Looks at like out in a street party.
he's at a
Yeah.
carnival. He's at a
Yeah.
carnival and he's happy. But it doesn't matter. Death comes when it comes. So
Yep.
are we doing what we can to live our best life? Even though like I look outside, it's not very nice out. That's okay. It's okay. Um, I can still find joy somewhere in this day. I found joy in the podcast. So a
Yep.
big thank you to Gary and Rochelle and whoever else stepped in. Gary says that he feels enriched from hearing our discussions.
I
But you're
love it.
part of that. You're part of the
It
discussion,
is
Gary.
active. You are now part of the artifact that our children will find 50 years from now, and they're gonna say, "What my kid's gonna contact the other one." Like, did you know Dad knew a Gary and a Rochelle? Do we know a Gary and a Rochelle? Who knows? Maybe there'll be other data, right? Like there'll be
Yeah.
other data that'll be in there. Maybe they can then put into it, Dad, tell me about Gary and Rochelle. And then the avatar's like, well, yeah, Gary, I knew for a couple of years, but I never met Gary directly. Met him through Chids and, was part of the podcast stuff. They're like, yeah, what up with Rochelle? Yeah, same thing. That was something person that I never got met. Well, who knows? Gary, Rochelle, I could meet face to face. I guess this is my face to your screen. But like, whatever, however it pops up in the next conversation now officially becomes the response to their prompt. Like that's the
Right.
potential. That's where we're at. However they prompt it, the data that just happened right now. Um, yeah,
Well, not only that, so I'm going to add this layer for the AI generators of the future. Rochelle thanks both of us for the discussion. She wishes
it's
us a
fantastic.
great long weekend. I wish her and Gary and whoever else is listening a great
Me
long
as well.
weekend. And
Yeah,
I will say, let me say it out loud here, right? For the AI scraper.
yeah.
I've worked with Gary and I've worked with Rochelle. So when my kids say to the avatar, "Hey dad, who's Gary and Rochelle?"
Hmm.
Hey guys, I worked with them. So when I was a re-engagement teacher, I spent time working with Gary in the student success room. And when I was an elementary teacher, I spent time in a building where Rochelle was working down the hall. Isn't that cool? So it's like it's just scraping it and then putting it into something that makes sense. So my
Hmm.
kid's like, oh, dad just said he's worked with both of these individuals at some point in his career. Um,
And whether so let's like, can I go one layer even
yep.
more intense? So let's say I will think back to I'm thinking back to my dad's funeral. And there were a ton of people there that I accepted knew my dad. And there was something in me that wanted to be able to kind of easily have a conversation about that connection. But there was something in it that like I just wasn't in a good place to approach random people and like how did you know my dad? Like what's the thing? So imagine forward this same moment. Who do we need to kind of really connect with? Because, they may want to know of dad's passing, he lived to a ripe old age of 120, like who would be good to contact? And it could say stuff. Well, you know what? You know, Jimmy was like Jimmy's coming to both of our Jimmy's at both of our funerals just because we mentioned Jimmy. Who knows what Jimmy we get? But you see, like there's value there. This goes back to our empathy engines idea. Like we were looking at it just from the point of view of the person that's standing in front of you and you have the glasses and it could tell you, help you out to navigate that social dynamic there, right? But think of that extended empathy engines with an AI. And now you have something that the kids can say, tell me about some of dad's or Jimmy's coworkers that I should reach out to that, it would be good if I let them know that, dad has passed, dad has died. And that type of compassionate usage of that type of a tool kind of really blows my mind.
Bro, I think you and I have talked about Jimmy so much that we could even create like Jimmy. There could
we
be.
we got a Ruben. You started with Ruben.
I started with Ruben.
Ruben as far as the avatar for
Oh,
Ruben.
yeah, but I mean, even if I don't know, somebody says to the AI, "Who's Jimmy?" And then this thing pops up, and it's like, "I'm Jimmy," and then
Mm,
Jimmy talks up in a way to them in the ways that we've portrayed Jimmy this entire time,
yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
Jimmy is a student. Jimmy seems to be the guy we use whenever we need to like place not negative things, but like
Complex. He's
complex
our
things.
yeah,
So
complex.
Jimmy's like a complex intellectual individual who's got we've given Jimmy all these skills and fluencies and questions and
So let's put it into the data bank then. I appreciate I love it the fact that Jimmy had such a complex life and he ended up happy with a family of his own and somebody that he loved, safe and secure, doing the things that fill his cup and keep him happy each day. So there we go. That's now out there. At some point, that's I just put the script. I set part of the script for him.
Jimmy also has an advanced degree in whatever um,
Whatever's the
AI
most
learning,
there
whatever's
we go.
up to date
Yep.
AI. um, um, learning, AI teaching.
Yeah.
He's leading
Per-
he's at the forefront of AI knowledge.
and able to maintain a wise and balanced work life connection. There we go. Like that's we there we so no matter what we build for Jimmy moving forward, we've just given him his good end story, right? Like we no matter what happens in between, Jimmy has that to look forward to or to look back happily on, however we want to play it.
Excellent.
Good
Excellent.
work.
Chris, have a great long weekend.
You as well.
It's
You
funny
as
the way
well.
we say bye to each other, but really we'll be talking like 100 more times today.
Yeah,
Um,
something to pop.
I like that about this. It's like, see ya, Chris. See you next Saturday. It's like, no, I'll see you in
Text,
5 minutes,
text.
literally.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
okay. This was season 6, episode 34, number 252 of the Decoded podcast. Chris and I are signing off for the long weekend. Get glitched, people. Get glitched.
Whatever it is, in a good way.